All right, we're settling in on the sofa, and we are doing our weekly show once again. I am Lance Ash, and with me on the sofa, next to me as usual, is my wife Bonnie,
Mrs. Lance Ash.
Mrs. Lance Ash.
Hi.
Okay, so I actually have some topics written down. I had more, but then I didn't get to the paper and pencil in time. But before we get to that, let's just have an overview. How you doing today?
Megan do. How are you?
I feel a hell of a lot better. I was so sleepy the last like 2 or 3 days. Um, Whatever brand of veggie burgers we buy are really good, and Bonnie made me one this morning. Um, I'm trying to think. We had a shitty week at work. Well, we won't talk about that. All right, let's get right into some topics. Number one, I wanted to mention I had to make use of. I don't stay on my phone like everybody else on the planet 24 hours a day. My phone is just for emergencies. So I had to call home the other night from work, and I got to say, this phone is so much easier to use than the last phone I had. Even turning it on, the old phone was a pain in the ass. So I wanted to say, I like the phone. All right, next. So I, do you know anything about this? I brought my copy of Led Zeppelin 4 with me in the car earlier today. I get in the car and open it up, and it's a um, CDR. Did my copy go bad and we got Stephanie to make a copy or something?
I have no idea.
You don't remember anything about this? That's weird. Um, so we voted yesterday.
Yes, we did. Unfortunately, we could only vote for 3 or 4 Democrats because 5 or 6 races were uncontested.
Unopposed, yeah. I saw that. I didn't even bother.
No, I don't bother. I never vote for an incumbent unless it's a Democrat who has a Republican opponent. But no, everybody was there. There was a Republican, and they were incumbents in those unopposed races, and I don't give them a vote. I mean, you even went to school with one of these people, and I stopped voting for any Republicans at all after they took Trump on as their head of their party. And I won't go back because the way that they have just evolved, I won't even trust a Republican on the state and local level.
How many resolutions were supposed to be on the ballot?
There were 3.
Because I only remember two. I remember you in the car telling us there's 3 initiatives, and I just remember 2 on the ballot.
There were there were 2 different issues. One was regarding taxes, one was regarding the judiciary. And one of those dealt with the taxes for the House and stuff here at the local level. The judiciary issue dealt with creating a new court dedicated specifically to tax issues that would have a different type of power to move a court closer to where the plaintiffs were. And that's something new. The tax court had been established in the Atlanta area, and that was where you had to go in order to hear certain matters. And the new amendment will allow the court to send the judicial matters to a court in a local jurisdiction, and that will help.
I'm so glad that the Georgia judge threw out most of the provisions that the new elections board had changed.
We've already got a system here where we have the electronic ballot, which is backed up by a paper ballot.
Mm-hmm.
The paper ballot is then reserved along with the electronic thing, and whenever the vote is close, within a certain percentage point, they are automatically forced to recount. And those paper ballots exist for that purpose. It's always a backup. And so you get the paper ballot and you look at it, and then it is scanned into the system. And the hand count is done when the vote's too close. And this whole thing of making it mandatory, every single vote, is absurd. It's obscene. We've got 11 million people in the state.
It's hard to
About
believe.
8 million people are registered to vote. And already we've had over a million people in a 3-day period of voting have voted early.
Did you notice the paper?
No.
Because I took a look at it. I was like, what's so special about this paper? It was a special kind of weave. You could feel it.
Oh.
And I bet you if you held it up to the light, it was a watermark.
No, I'm sure that's the case. Yeah.
Um,
We've already, quote, secured our elections here. We had done that before the last presidential election. We already had this whole double system in place. I can't remember if it was because Brian Kemp became governor and there were so many questions about him. He was formerly the Secretary of State, and then he ran as governor while Secretary of the State, which meant he oversaw
his own
the
election.
election. And then he ran against Stacey Abrams, and there were so many questions about, 30 or 40,000 people had been booted off the rolls from his election.
And what was the reason that they gave? It wasn't criminal convictions. It was like some...
It was, you hadn't voted in 4 years or 4 elections or something or another.
Okay, is that what it was?
I think. I'm not sure. It's been years now since that happened.
You know, if we had Stacey Abrams governor back the first time, she would have been on a national stage at that point, and we could have maybe had her as president. You know, or
I don't know.
maybe she would be in a position this time or next time to do it.
Well, she may end up in the cabinet. She is a well-educated, highly articulate, extremely intelligent woman. I remember seeing her before I heard her, and I thought, ew, short little fat lady with a gap between her teeth. You know, and nobody's going to like that. There's a certain look you have to have when you're running in politics, unless it was for Trump. And then I heard an interview with her on Georgia Public Broadcasting, and I thought, holy shit, this woman really knows. She knocks it out of the ballpark. She knows her subjects. And she has become one of those pundits for Georgia. But honestly, as much as it would be nice to see her on a national stage, we need her here in Georgia. We need her intelligence and her energy here in Georgia, because we've got to flip the state back to Democratic power.
I think her moment in the sun is past.
We've got to undo the restructuring. Once again, they keep redoing all the congressional districts and redrawing them. We're one of those states that they make no bones about it. They've been recorded talking about the fact that they redistrict in order to upend and upturn things. They did this here in Athens recently in order to change the local city politics. But we have things that run several hundred miles long that are shaped like something you would spill out on the floor. And it's long and wiggly and stretches between areas, and the other ones are almost block-like.
They know that Athens is like a
liberal bastion,
pocket of liberalism and artsness or whatever. So they try to exclude it, try to shape it in some way that they split it down the middle. Yeah. Remember when John Barrow was going to win if he'd been under the old...
He had won. He was our congressional rep. And they redrew it, and his house was literally taken out of the zone that he represented. So he had to up sticks and move. Interesting thing about Georgia politics is we are close to being 50-50 for a Republican versus Democrat. We have a very active rural community and a very complacent urban community. And so the rural people, even though they're greatly outnumbered population-wise, are extremely active in politics. And we know that we have a very close divide in active voters. But yet, on the state level, when you look at our congressional districts drawn for the federal, and then our state, we have about 60 to 65% Republican state houses, and it's because of the way that they've redrawn everything. But when you go for a national vote, such as president or for Senate, you see exactly how close things are. We have currently 2 Democratic senators, and we have a a state that swung Democrat in the last election by a mere 11,000 votes. And of 8,000 registered voters, 8 million registered voters, that is a lot of parity, equality in Democrats and Republican where we stand, split.
Well, everybody who's familiar with this show over the years knows I cannot stand the South, cannot stand living here in Georgia. But I will say, out of all the southern states, Georgia is the one most likely to have some progressives and liberals in it. Or it's just, I don't know.
We have several pockets of liberalism here.
Isn't Chapel Hill, North Carolina, one of them? All the university towns are like that, you know.
For North Carolina, yeah. And that's the thing. Wherever there's education, you find people swing Democratic. They say swing more progressive. So our last election had only 11,000 votes difference. And this election could be just as close.
I think it'll be less close if it's because more people are moving here, like you said, for college and so forth, and they bring more diversity of mindset from other parts of the country.
I wish I could be as optimistic.
That's what I was going to say. On a previous conversation, the people who are fucking things up, they know that the demographics are changing, and within 20 years, you'll have a new crop of people grown up to voting age who don't believe in all this horse shit that they've been spewing for years and years, and they want to lock it down now and change things now before it's too late, before the old fuckers.
And that's why this last the presidential election 2 cycles ago was so important. Why so many people fucked up and they didn't vote for Hillary.
Yeah.
We now have a Supreme Court that is overwhelmingly, extremely religiously conservative. And it's because these idiots can't see past their own butthurt about, oh, I didn't get Bernie in, oh, I didn't get Jill Stein in, oh, I didn't get my ultra blah 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 in. They can't see past their own ideals, their own standards to see that there's something more at stake. It's the other people, the other citizens of this country. And men that voted against Hillary because she was a woman are now having to deal with women in their lives who are saying, you know what? I'm scared I'm going to lose the contraceptive options I have. That's something my daughter and I and her partner and her doctor have had to discuss. And there's a good chance that if Project 2025 and Trump come into power, my daughter is going to have to change her contraceptive options, and it's even possible she may not have contraceptive options except for sterilization.
You know, if Trump wins again, it will be, I think, the final test to see how far along we are towards dictatorship. Because you know how, like, say, late night comedians make fun of Trump and have for 8 years now. If he gets in office and they enact the changes that they want, are they going to start arresting people who mock the regime? You know?
He had wanted to before, apparently, and he was told that no, he could not. And that's a scary thought.
That he even thought, well, is that an option?
Well, we now know from the generals, the military leaders that were there, they were the only thing stopping him from sending troops out in certain areas just for public dissent. And people were trying to stand up for other people's civil rights, the right not to be beaten and killed by police officers, those who supposedly protect and serve We're taking on the duties of jury, judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really makes you think because if Trump gets in office again, all these entertainment people, all the satirists in this country are really going to go into overtime then, to try to undermine him politically. I mean,
Because it's our only option.
yeah.
Because with a person like that in power, if he ends up in power, then I suspect that we'll lose the Senate too. And we won't gain the House back. And given the fact that the Supreme Court has ruled about his ultimate authority,
Right.
that's a
Rubber
scary
stamp.
thought. Even if we were to have both houses of Congress become Democratic or just barely Democratic, he would be able to run roughshod over everyone. The
I
Supreme Court would just rubber stamp everything.
and I think more he'll be so old and feeble at that point that he'll truly become the puppet that these other people want him
And
to.
the Stephen Millers will be writing even more policy. That man's a scary motherfucker.
He's
He's
yeah.
weaselly and nasty, but once he puts his policies into effect, he may not be the person to present them, but he's behind the scenes writing the policy.
You couldn't cast somebody better because he looks the part and sounds the part. That weaselly little rat bag, just
Yeah, we'll have to go and pull this video off too.
oh
He
God.
comes into power. And what happens when Trump just loses his mind? They pull the 25th Amendment out, and J.D. Vance takes over with his craziness.
And he's a willing stooge.
Oh, God,
you know,
yeah.
JD, we're going to need a little, easing on the
In exchange, we're
tax.
gonna put some stocks into your blind trust here, and
Unbelievable.
we're going to make certain that the right people control your blind trust.
All right, the next item I have on the list is I wanted to tell you a couple months ago I started using a set of grayscale markers because I wanted. Well, the truth is I'd been looking at Ben Catcher's work, and I think he just uses a watered down ink and brush. But I got to thinking, I just really like that effect. If I can do that and keep my cross hatching, so we found a set of grayscale markers online, and I wanted to tell Bonnie I'm really getting into them. I really like the whole effect.
Isn't it time for me to order some more?
I don't know. The problem is, out of that, say, 10 or 12 pack, there's only 3 or 4 that's really the workhorse pens, markers.
Well, then let's try to find those individually.
If you could find those individually, that
Give me
would
the
be
list.
fantastic. Okay.
Give me the list.
I will. They're the Tombow brand. And, but what I've done is, I work my way through my drawing, building it up to a certain level, and there's a certain stage where I would start, shift over into cross hatching. Well, I've interrupted that by that's when I do the grayscale markers, and then do the hatching on top of the markers. But anyway, they really worked out. Okay, next thing, I'm reading Hopscotch at work. And I'm reading Cosmo Comics by Italo Calvino in bed. And I'd forgotten just how charming that book is. Ow! Do you remember my reading that to the kids?
Vaguely.
The Sign in Space. I just finished reading that one. So, that's about it. You've been watching Elementary lately, right?
Yeah, I've been rewatching that. It's really a charming show.
Yeah, I can't get into it. A lot of the time, or some of the time, I'll be passing through the kitchen while Bonnie's watching something, and I'll get intrigued, like that happened with Bosch and it happened with Endeavor, but the Elementary show is not catching my eye.
This past week I was watching an episode where they're investigating vigilantes meet Comic-Con, superheroes. And the main character, Sherlock, walks in the room, and there's this masked man there, and he infers all this by just looking at the guy, his posture, what's under his nails, things like that. And the masked guy said, how did you know all that? And Sherlock just dryly says, I was bitten by a radioactive detective. There are a few other things, like him accusing his father of having access to the dark arts. There's just some humorous aspects of it that I like, and it's just like any other show. It just moves at a good clip, and as long as it doesn't get too, you know...
So how old are those episodes you're watching now?
I want to say that this was in the 2010s, 2015 area.
Okay. For some reason, I remember you watching something similar over at the old house. But that's a long time ago.
Oh, we did watch the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes together.
Yeah, and I tried rewatching one of those recently, and it's so kind of hokey with all the...
I watched the Benedict Cumberbatch series. Reed really got into that. And she and I both like anything Sherlock Holmes. And I've gone so far as to read the entire series and all the spin-offs of all the different modern authors. And then Peter, when he was in 3rd grade, we got him the collected works of...
Tell the story about him going to school.
Oh, well, okay. Anyway, so of all the series, the modern series, I like Elementary the best. I think that one's so superior to the Sherlock series that BBC did. Peter was in 3rd grade. He was a precocious child. He was often bored out of his skull because he wasn't eligible for the gifted program because it didn't start till 4th grade in his school system. And despite him having tested out at 12th grade level for reading and 8th grade level for everything else, they didn't promote him. They just kept him the same grade. And in 3rd grade, his teacher came to us and said, Peter's having behavioral problems. I did behavioral modification counseling with him. We changed everything about his life. We put him on a strict schedule. Went so far as to regulate even what he ate during the school week. We had the designated foods per night, like pizza Fridays, spaghetti on Wednesdays.
Well, you had a very set diet, right?
We had an extremely set diet. We had a very rigid schedule. We'd always had a very rigid schedule with the kids, where they got up at exactly the same time in the mornings, even on the weekends. And at bedtime, we had an hour of wind down time so that they would calm down enough to get into bed. So the first 30 minutes was reading with Mom, and the last little 30 minutes was lights out, or little lights time, and then lights out. So we had always had a very rigid schedule, but when he had behavioral problems, we had to modify his diet, and we went from large scale to small scale in his life. Before, he had 2 toy boxes full of stuff, and he would get very frustrated because he couldn't find things, and he would get agitated and angry. So I took his closet and I modified both sides of his closet and put in shelves, and every single thing that he owned got organized, so that when he was looking for the Lego dinosaur set, it was all in one box. And there was a picture of it on the front. And then I scaled back everything in his room, not taking it out, no. But I scaled it in such a way that everything had an exact spot. Books go here, displays go here, art goes here. And then I built him a new desk so that he had a computer center, and he had an area for art, and he had an area for building. And all of this still was not enough. He changed his behavior at school, but he was still unchallenged. And so we decided that, with the teacher's help, that when Peter was finished, he would have certain options available to him. he would be allowed to play computer stuff, but only for the purposes of education. And that way he continued to get educated. So when he was finished with his reading assignment on biology, he would then do a thing on the computer that would take him to the next couple of levels, which paid off in dividends because later on he aced all of his AP classes. He was the AP Student of the Year in all of the AP classes he took, and he beat out everybody in the AP classes in high school. So much so that Reed's friends came to her and said, "Would you please tell your little brother to stop outshining us? We can't beat the curve." And when they had the bell curve in, the teachers finally said, "Okay, bell curve starts under Peter," because he would get a 97 or 100. I mean, they were doing these gene splicing things, and Peter was acing them, and everybody else would be lucky to get an 80. And this is the best students. But when he was in third grade, he still didn't have enough. So we sent him to school with books. And one of the books we sent him to school with was the collected works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes and Associated Stories. Well, waiting for the bus each day, the kids had to line up along the hall, and they were all forced to read while they waited the 20 or 30 minutes for the buses to rotate and cycle out. And Peter was there one day reading his Sherlock Holmes. And the kids were allowed to ask the teachers that were on duty questions. And he went up and he goes, "Excuse me, what does the word ejaculated mean?" And she goes, "What? I'm reading this and it says, what's it ejaculated?" And she goes, "Get over here right now." And she grabbed him by the arm and drug him and his book down to his homeroom teacher. And she goes, "This young man, just ask me, what does ejaculated mean?" And his teacher, for her credit, said, "Peter, what are you reading?"
Yeah.
And he handed her the book. And he goes, "Where did it say that?" And the teacher read the line aloud and said, "Maybe you should have read this in context." It was basically, Watson exclaimed.
Right.
And he basically
bursts
forth verbally.
Yeah.
Yes, and the teacher had not bothered. She just made him feel ashamed in the moment because her mind just went to the worst possible place.
All right, I have to take a break. Oh my goodness, we're at 27. All right, we're gonna take a break. I'll be right back. I don't know. All right, and that was everything on my list. So, Bonnie just asked me. She wonders if our daughter's boyfriend knows that story about Peter. Be interesting how Reed would tell stories, anecdotes from, family past.
Childhood.
Yeah. I remember, I still feel this way. My parents built this mansion down the hill from us, and I think it was fully built. But anyway, at the time when this happened, Reed was a little bitty thing. She couldn't even talk, but she could walk. And it was a cold day. Had her in this coat with a hood. We went down there to my parents' house, and Reed sat on the front step of the place. And my dad and I were like 20, 25 feet away talking. And we turned and looked at her, and I was like, she's her own person. Like, it's such a weird concept that she's her own little person right now. And whenever she sends us photographs of herself or something, I'm like, can't believe this person is out there, separate. But anyway.
Did we discuss what's happening with her at work and Andrew post Helene and everything?
Well, no, I don't think we've talked about it on the show. I mean,
they both work in sectors that were affected in some way or another. She works for a hospital. As a matter of fact, she's been walking to work every day. Now the weather's nice and cool. She lives a tenth of a mile from the hospital in the historic district. And so they had shortages of certain things. Several factories were destroyed that provide medical supplies, biggest of which are the IV supplies. And so they're having to deal with that. And she's also had to. They've got extra patients that have come in, like their Augusta operations were affected. And then they had extra patients come in from Atlanta because of the chemical fire. And then Andrew's company, he is the chief growth officer or something or another for his petroleum company. And they've had to change their routes. Initially, when he got started with the company, he was in charge of making certain that everybody... He set up a computer system where they monitor all the routes and get out it's petroleum distribution, basically. And they serve, I think, Georgia and the Carolinas, and now they're doing, like, Florida and Tennessee also. And they had one of their drivers held up at gunpoint.
For what?
For enough gas to fill up
gas?
enough gas to fill up the guy's vehicle. Can you imagine committing a
sounds...
federal crime? Isn't that insane? So they've got...
Now put this siphon hose into the back of the car.
Isn't that insane, though? I mean,
Yeah.
you commit a federal crime for a tank of gas. But Andrew's been working... He's gone back. He would normally be in his new job working on projections on growth throughout the area that they serve, as well as projected growth and such. And he's had to go back and help with the distribution operations center. And one of his mates just got back in to
Excuse me, what? One of his what?
One of his workmates just got back in from Florida. They sent him from Georgia, GEMA, to Florida's emergency management group to help with networking distribution for petroleum products. So they're all stressed out.
Okay.
Reed's been making them cookies.
Well, oh, really?
Yeah, for his
mates. I just thought that was funny the way you said it. Sorry. So I was going to ask, does Reed have any, like, I don't know, ambitions to move around within the hospital system from what she's doing now?
You know what my dad always says? You always get rewarded with more work when you do a good job. And that's exactly what's happened. She's done a good job, and that means that she's been given more responsibilities. But I've asked her about whether or not she would take over her boss's job. She goes, absolutely not. It wasn't until just recently they determined that maybe her boss shouldn't be doing what everybody else is doing plus his job. So when his job got meshed into everybody else's, everybody else had to absorb some of his duties.
Well, I will say this. Here's a personal observation. The 9 years that I was in North Metro facility were horrible. But the whole time I was there, I held this position called mail tech. I was responsible for printing up all the labels, all the multiples of labels for all these containers of mail every night. I had to keep track of all this shit. I had to scan everything 2-3 times. But and it was just for a little tiny bit more money. But the fact that I was responsible for all this shit meant, in a way, it took a certain burden off me. Because if I didn't want to throw mail, participate in the heavy lifting, I could go, oh, well, I got to do shit, you know. But, of course, I had to do a lot of extra work, too, like pulling equipment from all over the goddamn building. But, you know, as much as I hated that whole ordeal of going up there for 9 years, I would like to have something like that here.
Group leader. You left the position here in Athens. You had become group leader.
Right. Well, that's why
I able to designate. You need to do this. You need to do that.
Right.
And that's what they need when they finally get some staff up here, which you're still waiting for.
Right.
You're still down a person. You're actually down about 6 or 8 people because they should have probably 10, 12 mail handlers in this job.
Just a few years ago, um, I would never admit weakness in any regard to the job, but I'm getting too old to do what they're expecting me to do for the next couple of months. The Christmas season will be horrible.
Yeah, you need to slow down, damn it. Even your union bosses tell you, Lance, you need to slow down.
I
You're
don't
going to hurt
know.
yourself. You really are. You're going to hurt yourself, man.
The separating the Amazon mail is such a pain in the ass. The machine ought to be more comprehensive so that when you feed parcels into it, you can go ahead and separate. You can just feed anything into it, and it'll separate out the non-machinable stuff without having to pick through this stuff by hand.
Several years ago, you and I watched a documentary based out of Britain where they went to New York City to see how the city ran. And one of the things they addressed was the delivery system. And of course, they addressed, the bike couriers and the taxis and such, and the metro. What do they call it there? It's not the metro, it's the subway system there. But they also went to a FedEx or UPS center, and they got great shots from inside, and they said, here is a parcel. It is going to X place, and let's follow it through. And the machine they put it in scanned it for the code and determined, is it in the city? Is it in the state? Is it in the region? Is it outside the region? And then from there, it took the parcel with this machine. It took it to all the different areas that it needed to be by simply scanning the barcode that told them what zone it was going to. And so all of the local mail got routed to one area, that is on the island. All the state mail went to another area, and then there was the regional, and then everybody else. Because everybody else had to go to the plains. And I thought, that's what the damn post office needs. They need something that comprehensive that you put it in at step one and it automatically puts it in the right direction. It seems like you guys are way behind industry standards.
Well, I've made the joke in the past. If the people who want to maximize profits really had their way, they would build a monstrous mountain in the middle of Kansas, and all mail would be flown into it and just dumped in the top of this great big mountain thing and sifted down and then sent back out, because the super ultra mega facility is so much more efficient than having.
So they said.
Yeah.
Remember George Carlin had a skit about locking all the reprehensible criminals up in Kansas and just using the borders of Kansas as a prison and let them just go at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there's been a lot of call for DeJoy to redo this whole system because right now
he has
they're
no.
taking mail that should be dealt with locally and sending it
We really
2 to 4 hours away and then coming back to be distributed in the same area.
we need to have some topics that are off limits, like the fucking post up, or just the work in general.
Hey,
It's
you're
depressing.
the one that brought it up. You're the one that started talking about when I was
It's
in
just
Atlanta.
so.
When I was in Atlanta.
Oh God. Well, I've been back in Athens.
You still have PTSD.
7 months now, and it's funny how much of this shit that I went through for 9 years is beginning to fade from my mind. People's names. I was going through faces in my head the other day, and I was like, oh God, I couldn't remember these people's names if I ran into them. Oh Lord. How bizarre. What a bizarre experience to go through. To basically live another life hours from here and know all these people that you never met and tell you about them and now it's over with, Isn't that weird? Look, think about all the secondhand drama that I brought home to you. You know, like that whole tiff I had with that.
Latoya.
Yeah, you never met her, you know.
Never.
And I remember you were driving me to work, and I was talking about her, and I said something like, you know, she's a big help to me or whatever. And she goes, and you said, well, you ought to tell her that. So that night at work, she was passing by me, and I said, hey, I'll tell you something. Um, I was telling my wife, just, what a big help to me you are. And she said, well, you ought to tell her. So I'm telling you. And she was like kind of stunned. She gave me this look like, well, she go, oh, thank you, okay. She was such a weird person.
I think you got that wrong. You're such a weird person.
Me? I'm not
Yeah,
weird.
that you never thought to say thank you. God, Lance.
Well,
I'm sitting on the sofa this week with you. I've tried out a new recipe, and you're sitting there snarfing it down, and I'm looking at you, and I'm waiting for you to give me the assessment, and you won't do it. And I finally go, well, what? How is it? You just. I'm like, do I take this to mean he likes it?
was that an impression of me eating?
He's starving. What the hell, man?
Oh my God.
I mean, I literally made it up just a couple hours before you got home. I made up this recipe, and I thought, my God, this is a fantastic recipe.
Let's clarify. This was black bean soup
That's right.
made with this fucking this instant pot thing that she bought is amazing because
It does everything.
but the thing is, in the old days, you have to put a bag of beans into water overnight to let them soak overnight, and then you cook them and cook
And
forever.
then you cook them forever and ever and ever.
Right.
I cooked this whole thing start to finish in an hour.
Dry beans to the ready product in what? How much?
An hour. It was less than an hour. And that included 10 minutes for chopping all the stuff.
It's magic.
He's magical powers. It's a fucking pressure cooker. Yeah. But
I mean, I've never operated the thing, but she's telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. But we still have nowhere to put it. It seems to be living on top of the dining room table.
right now, because we need to get the plumbers back in, I want them to remove the dishwasher and put in a cabinet door and things like that there. Because the dishwasher I haven't used for years. I never plan to replace it. I don't make enough dishes to justify having a dishwasher. Furthermore, my hands, giving my crippling arthritis, I mean, I have hands I can't close because of the arthritis. The dishwater helps. So I figure we'll put it there. It's just that right now I'm cheaping out. We've got our time away in the cabin halfway spent and, paid for, and I need to set aside the rest. And then I bought the Instapot, which also, and so I've got all these things that I want to make certain get paid, and then $2,400 worth of car insurance due next month, and it's insane. I mean, Peter's car insurance alone, it's crazy how much his insurance costs. His car insurance cost.
I'm glad I don't dabble in that side of the
dark arts,
the business.
dark arts of finance.
I don't want to know anything about money or bills or any of it.
It took me 6 months to access your thrift savings plan, and to.
You mean you personally get access, or
they would not. I don't know what the hell happened. I kept asking for the PIN number to be sent. Finally, the third time they managed to ship it, and I received it within 2 minutes.
But I mean, was it because it wasn't me personally that you had to have permission or some shit?
No. They wouldn't send me a PIN number. I kept requesting it, and it never arrived. I did it again. It never arrived. So I had requested a third time, and finally, 3 weeks after I requested it, the PIN finally arrived. And I don't know if that speaks to Palmetto being a piece of shit for delivery system, because everything has been upended since April, or if it's the thrift savings plan, which is fucking up things apparently. People have seen their accounts zeroed out. And I mean, I get my statements every month and every quarter and stuff, but I was trying to access it, and it took 3 hours. And it ends up what I needed to do wasn't even on the Thrift Savings Plan site. It was on the U.S. Postal site.
The the
They wouldn't
hoops you have
even
to
tell
jump
me.
through.
They wouldn't even tell me on the thrift site that what I needed to do was on the postal. I ended up having to Google it, and after getting around all this stupid AI stuff, I mean, who the hell depends on AI for answers? Jesus! And now it isn't just the top of the AI search. You have to be careful below that you're not getting AI generated images and answers. And so I finally just Googled it and searched for a couple of pages and found a reliable site that said, oh, you just need to go to light blue and do such and such. And I went straight there and did it. I'm like, God damn it. 6 months of trying to change your designation. And I was like, what the fuck?
Okay. Well, it's a pain in the ass. Trying to think. I usually let you handle all that shit because I can't stand it. It's depressing.
I do make you sign checks every once in a while, though. Hee hee.
Well, I mean, you ought to be able to forge my signature after all these years.
Yeah, but I still want you to kind of be in the process.
I have no idea how to copy your signature.
My signature is worse than Donald Trump's.
Oh,
I
Lord.
went to pick up one of your prescriptions at the pharmacy once, and it's one of those that's highly regulated and you have to show your ID and sign for it. And the person said, I'm sorry, but we need more than your initials. And I went, my name is Ash, A-S-H. It's only 3 letters long. The first one is my first name. This is B. Ash, okay? Does that suffice? Okay.
Yeah, I think I've probably told this story before. I can't stand writing in cursive. Now, when I was a little kid, you see grown-ups writing in cursive, and you think, "Oh, how fancy and wonderful and adult." I'm looking forward
You
to
didn't have
learning.
much of a childhood, did you? You thought cursive writing was fancy? Truly a benighted cultural upbringing.
I think it shows that I had an innate craving for learning skills and appreciating beauty.
You never even saw a museum until they took you to one in 8th grade, did they?
First museum?
Probably the Smithsonian or something, or one of those, wasn't it?
That's probably true. Yeah,
That's sad.
yeah,
That is so sad, Lance.
yeah.
I mean, my God. I got to see the Van Gogh Museum as a child.
Well, I think
I
that's.
went to King Ludwig's grotto. I mean, Jesus. Tutankhamun came to the U.S.
I think that's.
Went to see that.
I think that's why you married
We
me.
got to see the Chinese figures once they had been unearthed.
You,
We,
you took pity on me in marrying me for such a.
what the hell? When was the first time you heard classical music, for God's sake? I grew up on it.
I don't know, but that's funny you mention it because in sixth grade, my uncle had stored. He always stored a bunch of his shit over here at my grandmother's old place, and there's a storage shed out back, and it was full of crap. And no, actually, it might have been in the house at this time.
And?
Boxes and boxes of old LPs, and I knew he never kept track of any of his shit, so I'm picking through these LPs, and I'm like, well, what is Beethoven? What is Tchaikovsky? What is this? What is that?
Oh my
So I
God.
swiped all these LPs, and I started listening to classical music on my own, and I remember being just in love with Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony.
Meanwhile, my stepmom is celebrating Beethoven's birthday every year. Jesus. I swear, Lance, you had the worst childhood.
Well, I mean, I had to go get what I needed on my own, culturally. But anyway. You don't seem to dwell on the past as much as I do.
Yeah, I don't have as many regrets. I don't have as much baggage as you do.
Baggage.
You have a
You
lot.
have a lot of
You have
baggage.
a lot of emotional baggage, and you have a lot of resentment. Whereas I burned the bridges and never looked back. I haven't spoken to my mother basically since 6 months after my sister died.
That's
Because
coming up on 2 years or coming up on 3 years?
I can't remember at this point. I don't even think about it. My mother dragged my sister into this morass of religion and anti-science, and she was in part responsible for my sister's death. I mean, ultimately, my sister chose it on her own. She was an adult. She knew what she was getting herself into, and that's sad. I remember our dad picking us up on the weekends after the divorce, and he would deliberately record Nova specials so that he would make certain that we had some sort of balance in our lives. He would make certain that he continued the tradition of taking us to concerts and to museums because he knew that our lives had become centered around the church. When my mother married that idiot ex-preacher.
Well, I was going to say, I think my sister's current.
Husband?
No. Conservatism, which I think led to the husband. But I think that it was the entire milieu of living in this area, living, in this culture that led her to that.
Well, it started with your parents indoctrinating her in religion. And then she continued. She never went outside her safe zone. She married a guy because he was a virgin and he was a preacher's son. And then when she does get divorced, because that didn't work out, because she wasn't the ideal and he wasn't the ideal for Christian marriage, blah blah, she then sank into this crazy online group of circles that are part of the American Redoubt and Trumpism and MAGA and what's that other extremist group?
Well,
And
you forgot QAnon.
QAnon, that's the one.
Because my dad brought it up to me.
What did he say?
We were going somewhere together in one of his vehicles, and I remember where it was. It was where that racetrack is up the road here. He turns to me and he says, "Did you you know what this QAnon thing is?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Did you know that Catherine believes in all that?" And it was really funny to me because I was like, "It's interesting that he won't go that far."
And criticizing her, but yet he
No, no, no,
goes
no, no. I don't mean that. I mean,
that he won't get into QAnon.
right. I mean, he'll be conservative up to this point. I'm going to vote for this person, but that's a step too far.
I think that has something to do with Gina, the person he's with. But she's all anti-abortion, anti-choice, pro-Republican Party, conservative herself. But even she won't go into the QAnon craziness. It's a step too far into craziness. But your sister she and her husband are all in on that shit.
Let me check the time here.
Wait, my God, she's got Let's Go Brandon crap.
I can't read what the hell that says.
Because you're old.
Does it say 53? Yeah, okay.
You do know that you're pointing it away from me when you ask that question, right?
Okay, we've been talking for 53 minutes. I guess we can go a little bit longer. Make it an even hour. With ads. Our sponsor this week.
Yum, yum, yum.
Oh my God. Bonnie brings this up all the time. I drew a cartoon when I was like in 8th grade. It was for a fake product, and it was jingle, and it went, yum, 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 it's urine gum.
Jesus.
Oh my God. Shit, what was I going to say? I really have to say, I really enjoy these shows. I used to do a solo show in the car, and then when Bonnie started driving me, she became part of the show, and it was just such a success for me personally that I knew we had to continue in some format, even though she doesn't drive me anymore. I really enjoy these programs we do.
Yes, dear.
Feedback, please.
Yes.
I wrote a novel several years ago that had this character that had a robotic wife. And
Hey, I think you can sell that idea to a couple of people that you know. She never talks back.
and it's like he's really attached to her. So she basically like there's a scene where they go to the video store to rent some movies or something, and she agrees to whatever he picks out.
Of course she does. She's a robot.
So he's like, well, that's great, but on the other hand, I kind of feel bad for her. I mean, what does she really want to watch?
What does it matter? She's a robot.
And so he can't really get her to tell him the truth, you know. So
Hi,
anyway,
dear. Let's try this new position. Whatever she wants. Because she's a robot.
that oh, I loved that whole part of that novel. The old man down the street hates him because he's married to a robot.
Get off my lawn.
Oh my god! I need to find that goddamn thing. I don't know where the. I only have one physical copy, and that's it. I don't even know. I don't know where the original computer file is for it. Probably on that old goddamn iMac thing.
That iMac's gone.
Yeah, I know. I remember you donating it to.
Recycling it.
Be kind of cool to live in France. 35-hour work week. Well, anyway, I think that's about it. So, anything else?
Whatever you want, dear.
Very good. All right. See you later, everybody. Bye.